There's a role that many people find themselves in without ever actually choosing it. The strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds things together when others can't or won't. Sometimes that role begins very early. Maybe you're the oldest. Maybe you were the only girl or the only son. Maybe you were simply the one who noticed what needed to be done and you stepped in. And at first, it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like responsibility, like love, like doing what needs to be done. So you carry it. And over time, something subtle begins to happen where the role stops being situational and starts becoming your identity. You're the one people depend upon, the one who shows up, the one who figures things out when everything else feels uncertain. And eventually, you begin to think of yourself that way too. I'm the strong one. The thing about identities like this is that they can bring a quiet kind of meaning, of purpose, being needed, being the person others turn to when things fall apart. There can even be a sense of pride about it because you're the one who holds everything together. It can feel like it's proof of your strength. But over time, the weight of that role can begin to show up in quieter ways. It's not always a dramatic burnout. Sometimes it's just a heaviness, a weariness that sits in the background. That feeling that everyone gets to fall apart sometimes, except you. Because the strong one doesn't get that luxury. The strong one stabilizes the room. They don't destabilize it. And there's another difficulty that often comes with that role. The strong one rarely asks for help. And it's not necessarily because they don't need it, but because they've been seen as capable for so long that stepping out of that role can feel unfamiliar to them and to those who depend upon them, even uncomfortable. There can be a quiet fear that if you stop holding everything together, that things might fall apart. Or that people might not know how to see you if you aren't that strong one anymore. When someone carries a role for long enough, the environment begins to adjust around it. Because if you're always the one who steps in, if you're always the one saying, I've got it, people eventually believe you. Then they step back. And that's not because they don't care. Sometimes it's simply because the role has already been filled. And sometimes people may have tried to step in earlier. But when help is declined often enough, the offers eventually stop coming. So the strong one may feel alone in carrying that weight, while others quietly assume the role is being held on purpose. And then something else can begin to grow in that space too. Resentment. The strong one may begin to feel it. That quiet bitterness of always being the one who shows up. Of carrying what feels like more than their share. But something worth naming is that resentment doesn't always move in one direction, because sometimes others feel it too. And that's not necessarily because they don't care, but because the role has become so firmly established that there's no real space left for them to step in. Or because of that strength, the consistency of it, the reliability of it, it can, it quietly kind of feels like comparison, like an unspoken standard that they can't meet, even when that was never the intention. So both sides end up carrying something, and neither side may fully understand what the other one is holding. Over time, roles that stay in place too long can quietly reshape the entire space around them. This is where something difficult and honest can begin to surface. Not blame, not guilt, just recognition. Sometimes the exhaustion of being the strong one isn't only about what others expect. Sometimes it's also about how tightly we've continued to hold the role ourselves. And not because we wanted that burden, because the role has become part of who we believe we are. And that realization can be unsettling. And that's because it raises a quiet question. Like, if I'm not the strong one anymore, who am I then? What does my life look like if I stop carrying everything alone? And that question doesn't have a quick answer. And it's not supposed to. Because for some people, the role of the strong one has been held for so long that setting it down, even partially, feels less like relief and more like losing something, even when what's being set down was never entirely chosen. There are moments in life when someone genuinely needs to step up, no doubt, where the situation calls for steadiness. That part is very real. But steadiness and isolation were never supposed to be the same thing. Somewhere along the way, for many people, the two became indistinguishable. And that's worth sitting with. Not to assign blame, and not to unravel everything at once. Just to notice. Because noticing is where things begin to shift. Not with a decision, not with a dramatic change, but with the quiet, honest acknowledgement that something has been heavy and that you have felt it. Just remember that this isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about doing something consistently enough to matter. That's enough for now. Sit with yourself there and continue traveling. If this feeling is where you are right now, the next step isn't fixing your life, it's understanding where you are. And that's where we begin.